Noor is a young man living in a fantasy world. He is quite strong for his age and is well respected by everyone in the town. He works in a physically demanding job, but even his boss is impressed with his work ethic and never makes excuses to cut his pay or dismiss him, as he is the best worker there. One day, after receiving his daily wage, he was heading back to town when he heard a girl's voice crying for help from a nearby cave. He immediately rushed towards the sound, even though his boss warned him not to go because it was too dangerous. Ignoring the warnings, he entered the cave and found a girl wrapped in magical barbed wire, while a group of adventurers was fighting a huge demon bull. Since childhood, Noor had always taken care of his mother and managed the household because his father had left without a word. He had grown up to be a real man, taking care of his home. His mother was weak and bedridden, so Noor would make hot soup for her while covered in grime, and he would tell her he was going out to hunt some rabbits for their dinner. His mother would worry about him and apologize for not being able to give him anything, but Noor would reassure her that he needed nothing. That evening, Noor prepared a hearty rabbit stew for his mother, but when he returned to her side, she had passed away. Now, Noor had no family left. While burying his mother outside their home, he resolved not to be weak and weep. He began living alone, tending to the garden, hunting, and farming. He studied in his room after thoroughly cleaning it. He trained his body by fishing, carrying heavy loads, and eating plenty of protein every day. One night, feeling very lonely, he climbed up to fetch a dusty old book to read. The story took him back to the past, and he remembered the times when his family was whole, and his father would tell him stories about brave adventurers who battled dragons, learned magic from wizards, broke curses in haunted forests, and fought against goblin armies. These stories always captivated him because his father said that the duty of an adventurer was to protect the weak and ensure they were never harmed. This gave him inspiration to do something with his life. The next day, after taking care of the animals, he was ready to leave home and head toward the city to try becoming an adventurer. He spent the night in the forest, built a fire, and by morning, he arrived at the beautiful city of the kingdom. He walked through the massive main gate and was overwhelmed by the number of people in the markets and the bustling trade. As he walked, he noticed a young man with a sword and decided to follow him, which led him to the Adventurers Guild. He entered the building and found a large young man at the reception desk, rather than a charming young woman. Disappointed, he told the young man that he was here to join the guild, but the young man ignored him and said this was not a place for children and that he should think about his parents first. Noor replied that his parents were gone, and the young man surprisingly told him to visit the training academy first. Noor seemed confused, but the young man explained that to join a guild, he needed to choose an academy, undergo basic training, select classes and skills. Only after graduating could he become an adventurer. Noor was thrilled to learn this and excitedly went to an academy with the goal of becoming the strongest swordsman. He enrolled in swordsmanship training, but after a few weeks, while the other students were awakening their magical potential, Noor found himself stuck, unable to develop any magical abilities. Nevertheless, he continued to practice diligently. Months passed and his instructor told him that he had no talent and was just wasting his life. He suggested that Noor join another academy because he clearly wasn't cut out to be a swordsman. Undeterred, Noor sought out a different academy and decided to train as a warrior. He trained with a burly red-haired young man, but after enduring months of rigorous training, the red-haired youth told him that he had no talent and had only learned how to block attacks. Next, Noor tried several other academies. First, he became a hunter, but he was soon dismissed as a failure. Then he tried his hand at thievery, but was rejected for being inept. He also became a mage, but that didn't work out either. Eventually, he decided to become a healer, but the cycle of failure continued. A chubby young man was astonished to learn that even after many months at each academy, Noor had learned nothing and said it was a pity. There was nothing he could do to help him become an adventurer. Disappointed in himself, Noor left the city and returned to his small house in the forest. However, he decided not to accept defeat and created his own training regimen with a sword. He resolved to perfect a technique he had learned, blocking and redirecting incoming attacks. He spent countless days and nights owning this skill. Finally, after a year of intense training, he was strong enough to block 10 simultaneous attacks. Determined to continue improving, he practiced for another 3 years, reaching the point where he could block 100 swords at once, though he still hadn't gained any new skills. He practiced so relentlessly that his sword eventually broke. 14 years later, he realized that through all those years of daily training, he had achieved the ability to block 1,000 swords simultaneously without failing. Despite working so hard and still not acquiring any new skills, he resolved to visit the Adventurers Guild once more. This time, he met a charming girl. She assessed his skills and advised him to go back to the academy for further training. Noor told her he had already been, which surprised her, and she bluntly told him he had no skills to become an adventurer. Feeling disheartened once more, Noor was approached by the chubby young man from before, who barely recognized him. They sat down for a drink, and Noor shared his training journey over the years. The chubby young man explained that adventurers are ranked from E to S, and to achieve rank E, one needs at least one skill, which Noor lacked. Noor felt utterly dejected, but the young man revealed that few people knew about a rank even lower than E, rank F. There were certain restrictions for F-ranked adventurers. They couldn't take on high-risk missions or work in the forests outside the city. They could only perform menial labor within the city, but no one really wanted those jobs. To his surprise, Noor immediately accepted and eventually received his adventurer's license. He took on odd jobs around the city, carrying heavy loads, finding lost cats, and continued his nightly training. He also took up work as a caregiver, cooking for the elderly. Despite doing all these menial tasks, he continued his training and seemed genuinely happy to be working as an adventurer and helping others. Returning to the present, the gigantic demon bull was charging toward the adventurers, using its massive horns to smash the lead adventurer, sending him crashing into a wall. Noor quickly checked on him and realized he was dead. Looking around, he saw the other adventurers being impaled by the demon bull. It was killing everyone in the vicinity effortlessly before turning its gaze to the white-haired girl. Without hesitation, Noor took action, throwing a large rock to divert the bull's attention and then fleeing. The monster pursued him at an incredible speed, and Noor realized he couldn't run any longer, so he turned back to block the bull's attack. To his surprise, he managed to block the blow with such force that the demon bull was thrown straight into a wall. The bull quickly recovered and leaped through the dust to attack Noor again. But Noor continued to block its attacks, knowing that if he let even one attack slip through, he would be reunited with his mother. He tried to find an opening but realized he had no offensive skills. His sword was chipped, and the bull had turned back toward the girl. Noor used his speed to appear before the bull and block its attacks once more, though his sword was now badly damaged. He remembered his father's words that an adventurer should protect the weak even at the cost of their own life. So he resolved to face the demon bull, even with a broken sword. As the monster attacked, Noor poured all his strength into blocking, causing the bull's axe to bounce back and sever its head, which then crashed into the rocks. The girl watched in astonishment as blood splattered everywhere, and the magical barbed wire vanished from her body. Noor fell to the ground, looking at his shattered sword and realizing how close he had come to death. The girl immediately thanked him for saving her and asked his name, but Noor responded that his name was nothing memorable and walked away. As he walked down the road, he reflected on how he had almost been killed by the giant bull and realized he needed to train even harder if he truly wanted to become an adventurer capable of protecting others. After Noor disappeared, the dungeon was filled with the white-haired girl's guards. It turned out that she was Lin, the daughter of a noble family. Her personal guards arrived to inspect the demon bull's corpse, while the other guards from the Clay's family lay dead on the ground, covered with white cloth. Lin immediately apologized for not being there to protect herself, but was assured by her guards that it wasn't her fault. Soon after, another young man named Recap-kun arrived, inquiring if she was all right and providing details about what had happened. The news of the attack reached her brother, Rain. He was startled to learn that his sister had been attacked by the monster. The chubby man explained that there had been a monster sighting near his workplace the previous night, which had worried him. Noor didn't realize that the monster the chubby man was referring to was the very demon bull he had killed the night before, so he assumed it must have been a lower-level demon bull, as he had defeated it. The chubby man told Noor he was very lucky to have left when he did, as even former or rank adventurers wouldn't stand a chance against such a powerful beast. Noor wiped the dirt from his face and wondered what kind of monster could make even a rank adventurer terrified. He then thanked his lucky stars for the chance to face the giant bull. Noor asked what had happened to the monster, and the chubby young man replied that an unknown young man had ultimately killed the monster with a single blow, which had stirred up public opinion. Noor wondered how strong the young man must be to have killed a monster like that, not realizing that he was the very person the chubby man was talking about. Later, the chubby young man paid Noor for the day's work, but advised him to find a real job if he wanted to earn more money. Before Noor could respond, a well-dressed figure appeared behind him and called his name. Noor turned to see the white-haired girl he had saved the day before. He asked how she had found him. She apologized for following him, but assured him she had used a long-range detection skill to locate him. Noor inquired if she had learned this skill from a thief academy, but she clarified that she was from a mage branch and possessed skills from all 6 branches. Seeing that they were attracting too much attention, Lin asked if they could speak privately somewhere. Before Noor could respond, the chubby young man grabbed him and asked what scandalous thing he had done. Noor replied that he hadn't done anything wrong, while Lin set up a soundproof barrier and instructed him to follow her. They left the building together and walked through the streets to a secluded area. Lin told Noor that she truly wanted to thank him because not only had he saved her life, but he had also saved many other people's lives. Still unsure of his own strength, Noor thought that Lin was being overly generous and that he had disrupted her moment of glory by intervening. Lin corrected him, saying it was not true. In fact, if he hadn't come to help, she would have died there. She then declared that she wanted to reward him for his assistance, but Noor immediately responded that her gratitude was enough. However, Lin insisted, saying that she was of high status and that even her father wished to thank him personally. Noor continued to decline Lin's offers, and she was astonished that someone would refuse a reward from nobility. She asked if he was having any troubles and declared that her father would grant him a substantial amount of land if he wished, but Noor still refused her offer. He told her he didn't need anything from her. Lin began to tear up, feeling obligated to repay him. She insisted that she wouldn't leave until he accepted her gratitude. Noor recalled a similar situation with a healer academy instructor, and eventually, he relented and agreed to meet her father, though he continued to refuse any significant reward. Lin was delighted and used magic to conceal both herself and Noor as they walked through the city to her mansion. When they arrived, Noor was stunned by the sheer size and opulence of the place, having never seen such a grand estate. As they passed the guards and entered the mansion, Noor wondered if Lin was indeed a noble, given her wealth. Along the way, they encountered her personal guards and Inez. Inez eyed Noor with suspicion and asked who he was. Lin introduced him as the young man who had saved her life, which softened Inez's demeanor, and she agreed to take them to meet the Lord. As they continued through the mansion, Noor noticed a young man in golden armor waiting by a window. The man immediately took action, spinning his spear and pointing it at Noor, demanding to know who he was. Inez told the man to back off because Noor was a guest of Lin, but the armored young man, who resembled Pikachu in human form, smirked at Noor, finding his appearance amusing. Inez introduced the young man as Gilbert and asked him to accompany them into the room since she still wasn't entirely convinced of Noor's intentions. They waited outside while Lin's father, Clyde, discussed the increasing risk of war with his son, reflecting on their last meeting with the King of Glydas. He had insulted them and threatened to go to war if they did not grant his country access to all the dungeons in their kingdom. Immediately after, the door opened and everyone entered the room. While both Inez and Gilbert knelt before the Lord, Noor, unsure of the identity of the young man sitting in the high chair, simply walked forward without acknowledging Lin. She introduced him to her father, confirming that he was the one who had saved her life. The Lord immediately stood up and approached Noor, thanking him for saving his daughter. Noor informed him that he was not a noble and had never spoken to nobles before, so he was unsure of the proper etiquette. The Lord, however, paid no mind to Noor's awkwardness and warmly shook his hand, insisting that Noor choose any reward he wished to receive. Noor promptly declined, stating that he did not need land or gold. The Lord was bewildered, but offered Noor the treasures from the oldest dungeons in their kingdom if he desired. Rain advised against it, noting that the treasure was worth more than the GDP of a small nation. To everyone's astonishment, Noor declined again, stating he did not want any reward from them. The Lord was perplexed, unable to understand why someone would refuse such generous offers. He then moved to his seat and retrieved a massive black sword from behind him, which had once been his personal weapon during his days as an adventurer. Rain was concerned, but the Lord reassured him that the sword was meant for use on the battlefield, not to be kept as a decorative item. He handed the sword to Noor, who immediately grasped the hilt and realized that it was heavier than anything he had ever used. Noor thought it was just an old sword, so he decided to accept it as a gift because he wanted to finish the matter quickly and return to his work. The Lord then encouraged him to swing it once. To the Lord's astonishment, Noor wielded the massive sword with one hand and created a gust of wind around them. Noor looked at the Lord and said that while the sword was a bit heavy, he would manage. Clays chuckled, unable to believe that the young man had swung such a large sword with just one hand. Clays asked Noor if he would be willing to train Lin, as she would be vulnerable and in danger at this time. Lin smiled, but Noor immediately declined, saying he could not teach her anything, and decided to leave. As he walked through their display room, Noor glanced back at the sword and realized it was the same size as a drainage ditch, meaning he could use it to clear dirt from the ditch much faster. However, before he could leave, Gilbert blocked his path. He pointed his spear at Noor's face and said he wanted to see if Noor was worthy of the sword. As Noor wondered when he would be able to leave the mansion and return to work, Gilbert led him down a corridor, and Noor questioned where he was being taken since he just wanted to get back to his job. To Noor's surprise, Gilbert brought him to a training ground for a solo duel. Noor was shocked as he had not fought any one-on-one since his school days due to his lack of confidence. Gilbert picked up a wooden pole for the sparring match. He revealed that he was quite renowned in the capital and told Noor to choose his weapon. Noor saw this as a great opportunity to learn from the veteran and chose a regular wooden sword. He didn't think he stood a chance against Gilbert but promised to give it his all. Gilbert attacked first, thrusting the pole at Noor, but Noor easily dodged the move. He could clearly see Gilbert's movements, almost like a mosquito about to be swatted, due to his extensive training. Noor wondered why Gilbert moved so slowly and thought that Gilbert might be holding back, fearing that he might accidentally harm the inexperienced newbie Noor. Noor asked for a moment to pause and told Gilbert not to underestimate him. With that, Gilbert decided to fight him seriously. This time Gilbert launched much more intense attacks, but Noor still found them trivial. Not only that, but Noor was also able to exploit Gilbert's weaknesses every time Gilbert missed an attack. Frustrated that his blows were not landing on Noor, Gilbert decided to use a more agile maneuver. He changed his attack's trajectory at the last moment to force Noor to jump, then took the opportunity to strike him as he landed. Noor still managed to evade the attack as he touched down and told Gilbert to increase his speed because he was already accustomed to the current intensity. Gilbert, having already been giving it his all, was pushed to his limits by Noor's challenge. Noor, however, still did not realize that he was genuinely stronger than Gilbert. Suddenly, Gilbert unleashed a special technique. The attack came closer and closer, but as the dust settled, Noor was no longer in front of Gilbert. Noor had dodged the attack and moved to the side. Seeing the devastating power of Gilbert's attack, Noor decided to retreat rather than continue fighting. His skill in dodging the special move had left other knights in shock. They couldn't believe he had avoided Gilbert's signature attack. Some speculated that Noor was only alive because Gilbert was using a training weapon. Otherwise, someone of Gilbert's talent could have easily eliminated Noor on the spot. Hearing his subordinates' praises only made Gilbert feel more disheartened. He was known for his spear skills, and had traveled throughout the kingdom seeking out strong opponents to defeat. No one had presented him with a sufficient challenge, and Gilbert was beginning to feel discouraged. He had come to the capital and become a knight to fight monsters, believing they would be stronger than humans. Yet even monsters could not match his power and skill, leaving him increasingly bored with his situation. One day, while lying under a tree, his old master came to visit him. This was the very person who had trained Gilbert in his early days. Gilbert confided that his overwhelming strength had made his life feel monotonous. He wished for more strong opponents like Noor to keep his battles engaging. His mentor had told him that one day, there would be a student who surpasses him in prowess, and Gilbert hoped that such a person would appear while he was still alive, as it would be the only way for him to find joy in his battles. Reflecting on the young man who had defeated the Minotaur with a single blow, Gilbert's mind was filled with conflicting thoughts. Initially, he had sensed something interesting about Noor, but he hadn't expected Noor's true strength to be as significant as it turned out to be. During their fight, Gilbert realized that Noor was far stronger than his rustic appearance suggested. When Noor asked Gilbert to increase his speed, Gilbert used his fastest special attack, one that exceeded the speed of sound, knowing that no one could survive such a blow. Yet Noor had managed to dodge it, leaving Gilbert feeling utterly defeated. His humiliation was compounded when Noor decided to stop, as if to spare him from further embarrassment in front of the entire army. Noor's parting words about looking forward to their next encounter felt like an indirect challenge to him to train harder. Gilbert believed he had finally found someone who could make his life more interesting. Noor, unaware of the extent of Gilbert's admiration, had used his body-enhancing skills and feather step to narrowly avoid Gilbert's ultimate attack. A slight delay would have meant certain death. Gilbert suspected that Noor had somehow known or sensed the adjustment in his attack speed, allowing him to dodge just in time. He genuinely appreciated Gilbert for showing him that he still had much more to learn. The following day, Noor began using the massive sword he received from the Lord to clean out a sewer. He was surprised to find that the weapon, despite its size, was surprisingly effective for the task. Noor was trying to kill time while work at the construction site was halted due to the Minotaur incident. He was sitting in the woods, thinking about how to use the giant sword he had just received, But he didn't have enough money to buy other necessary items. He tried using fire magic to make BQ, but found it too weak for the task. While he was figuring things out, he heard footsteps and turned around to see Lin standing there. Lin had come here to find him. She asked if she could become his apprentice so she could learn from him while serving him. She was willing to assist him in any way, but Noor immediately refused. He said that he could manage on his own and didn't need her help. Lin didn't give up easily. She tried to convince Noor by offering money and other incentives, but Noor still refused firmly. Lin insisted that she would be useful to him and continued to ask to be his apprentice. Noor eventually gave in to her stubbornness. To prove her abilities, Lin decided to demonstrate her magical powers. She created ice spears and shot them at Noor, then used fire magic to burn them. She continued to cut down a large tree with a small dagger using another skill, and finally used a sword skill to blow away a tree behind Noor. Lin was confident that her performance would be impressive enough to convince Noor to take her on as an apprentice. However, Noor still firmly refused. He felt that Lin was overestimating him and wondered how to convince her that he was not as remarkable as she thought. To show Lin that he was not worthy of her admiration, Noor decided to demonstrate his skills by creating a small fireball. He did this just to show Lin that he was not special. Despite Noor's efforts, Lin was not discouraged. Lin was stunned when she saw the fireball. She turned around and headed back home, reflecting on a story her teacher used to tell about a talentless youth. At that time, Lin had thought the tales were merely to scare students because she couldn't believe that any 12-year-old could endure the grueling training across all 6 academies for an entire semester. In fact, even seasoned warriors found it tough to survive. One day, the most powerful mage in the Magic Academy had shown her how to control a small flame, then expanded it to demonstrate his skill. The mage explained that it took him nearly a decade of practice just to increase the size of that small flame. Now, when Noor demonstrated his fireball, Lin was taken aback. It was much larger than the one produced by the world's strongest mage. Noor downplayed his abilities, saying he only managed to do that much, and claimed that his skills in other areas were similarly average. Lin realized that the size of Noor's fireball revealed a lot about his true abilities. She concluded that Noor must be extraordinarily talented across the board. She felt embarrassed for having boasted about her recent high-level skills in front of him. Although Noor was exponentially stronger than she was, he never flaunted his power. Instead, he did menial tasks that others avoided to help others. Lin admired how Noor's mind and character seemed to be as strong as his physical abilities, and she believed that he could not be subdued by anything. As a princess, she knew that one day she would have to lead the kingdom alongside her brother. To do that, she needed to become stronger. She wanted to learn from Noor how to become powerful and improve herself. Lin decided to consider herself Noor's student. Noor wanted to protest, feeling unworthy of being her teacher. He thought that if they ventured to the Adventurers Guild, Lin would see how bad his situation was and stop bothering him. When they arrived at the guild, the chubby young man immediately asked Noor why he was with the princess. Noor explained that the situation was complicated, urging the young man to give them some privacy. Although Noor was eager to ask for advice, the young man asked what they needed. Noor asked for a commission for both of them, since Lin was a B-rank adventurer. The young man suggested that if Lin joined Noor's party, they could go out of town to hunt goblins. Noor was surprised. He had only heard stories of adventurers using goblins as training dummies. He couldn't believe that he could actually do something like that. However, he realized that he was relying on Lin's high rank. Although he had hoped that Lin would disappear earlier, Noor now felt guilty as she stared at him. He wondered if she saw his greed and shamelessness. She asked if there was a problem, and Noor expressed concern about relying on her rank. Lin assured him that there was no problem, and said that he was free to use her rank in any way he needed. Noor felt like a fraud, but he was excited to finally realize his dream. Determined to walk out of the guild, he was stopped by a fat young man who reminded him that he didn't even know where to find goblins. The fat young man completed the paperwork and advised Noor not to rely solely on luck, as although goblins were low-level monsters, they could still be quite dangerous. Noor pointed out the locations of the goblins on the map and noted that their numbers had recently decreased. He included Noor to collect the right ears of the goblins he killed for rewards, and then hurriedly sent him on his way. Noor and Lin entered the beast forest, and Noor was surprised because he had never seen a forest like this before. He mentioned that the trees in the south were different from those in his homeland, and Lin gave him a brief lesson on the local ecosystem. Noor then inquired about the goblins. Lin explained that they were small monsters that hunted fruits and small creatures, but their numbers could increase rapidly. If their numbers exceed a certain threshold, The forest could no longer sustain them with enough fruit, leading them to attack human settlements. This was why the Adventurers Guild sent people to keep goblin numbers in check, but they were prohibited from eradicating them entirely because goblins were more beneficial to the ecosystem than humans. Nor was impressed by Lin's knowledge and felt he had nothing to teach her. They continued into the denser parts of the forest, but despite her detection skills, Lin couldn't find any traces of goblins. However, she sensed something at a distance and suggested they investigate. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the sky grew darker, and the surrounding fog thickened. When they reached the source of the disturbance, Lin could feel the presence of a creature, but they still found nothing. She remarked that the creature had disappeared. However, Nor sensed something unusual in the rustling of the leaves. He looked ahead and saw the mangled body of a goblin, floating in the air before it suddenly fell to the ground. Lin immediately cast a spell to reveal the creature behind the disturbance, and a massive, green goblin with a red crystal on its forehead appeared. Nor was startled and asked if it was related to Hulk. Lin replied that it was a goblin king, but she stumbled over her words, and Nor only heard the word goblin. Panicked, Nor realized that if ordinary adventurers used these creatures as training dummies, they must be incredibly strong. The Goblin King uprooted a tree with its bare hands and roared deafeningly, causing Lin to turn pale. She knew that even the Goblin King was a disaster-class monster not easy to deal with, and this Goblin King was many times stronger. Lin knew that the Goblin King was not a naturally occurring monster, but one created through forbidden experiments. She was terrified of losing this battle, and Noor realized that despite her strength, she had probably never fought a monster before. He reassured her not to worry, as their opponent was just a goblin. His words gave her courage, and she thought perhaps Noor had anticipated a creature of this level would be here, explaining his enthusiasm. Standing beside him, Lin was confident they could defeat the Goblin King together with Noor. The Goblin King attacked them with a tree trunk. Noor managed to block its first strike and deflected the second. When the Goblin King attempted to push Noor into a corner, Noor overpowered it with a powerful counterattack. This caused the Goblin King to lose its balance, and Lin tried to strike it with wind and ice magic. However, the Goblin King swiftly dodged all her attacks. The Goblin King hurled a tree towards Lin, but Noor intercepted it. He asked Lin if she was all right, and she told him to focus on the goblin, as it was throwing more trees. Noor continued to block the attacks, but he was beginning to feel fatigued. Lin noticed that any minor injuries the Goblin King sustained were healing unusually fast, and she suspected the red mana crystal on its forehead was the cause. Suddenly, the Goblin King threw 3 trees simultaneously at Noor. Panicked, Noor feared he wouldn't be able to block them all at once. Thankfully, Lin intervened with a powerful gust of wind, blowing the trees away. Her attack caused damage to the goblin, but its wounds healed immediately. Lin was sure they needed to remove the mana crystal from its head to defeat it, but Noor wasn't confident they could manage that. Then, Noor had an idea and asked Lin to cast the wind spell on his back. She warned him that the spell was strong enough to tear through castle walls. Noor planned to use the force from the spell to accelerate towards the Goblin King faster than it could react. Lin agreed and cast the spell, propelling Noor forward. Although he used his physical enhancement skills, he still suffered some broken bones from the impact. He dodged a tree thrown by the Goblin King, quickly healed his injuries, and leaped into the air to deliver a finishing blow. The Goblin King tried to attack him with another tree, but Noor's powerful strike sliced through the tree and struck the mana crystal on its forehead. The crystal was knocked loose, and the Goblin King let out a pained scream as Noor was thrown to the ground. He stood up and saw the Goblin King writhing in agony. Lin then approached him with the mana crystal she had safely retrieved. Noor asked if she could handle the Goblin King on her own, and she nodded. Noor felt uncomfortable seeing the monster in pain, so he asked Lin to grant it a peaceful end. She agreed and proceeded to incinerate the Goblin King. Noor, feeling sympathy for the creature, resolved not to hunt goblins for a few years. He acknowledged that he was still too weak to face such monsters and needed to train harder before returning to the forest. Later, agents serving Rain brought the mana crystal to him and reported the Goblin King's demise. Rain, upon inspecting the crystal's purity and size, recognized it as a product of the Magic Empire. He was also astonished by how the massive monster had been brought into the kingdom without detection by the guards or intelligence agents. Rain instructed his agents to remain vigilant for any such anomalies across the neighboring cities and to address them promptly. Meanwhile, Noor and Lin were reporting to the fat young man at the Adventurers Guild. He asked Noor how he felt about his first monster hunt. Noor, still believing he had fought a regular goblin, said it was much harder than he had imagined, and that they only won thanks to Lin. Lin began to admire Noor's humility, and the fat young man also thought Noor had merely observed the princess fighting the goblin from the sidelines. When the fat young man heard about the red mana crystal on the Goblin King's forehead, he was skeptical if it was truly a normal goblin. Noor turned to Lin for confirmation, and she responded that since her mentor called it a goblin, it must be one. Satisfied, the fat young man concluded it was a rare monster and instructed them to submit their spoils. Noor and Lin realized they had forgotten to collect the goblin's ears before incinerating it. Meanwhile, Rain received reports of strange occurrences in nearby towns and villages. In some places, people heard unusual noises at night, and animals were returning from the forest in fear. In other areas, the number of missing pets was rising, and the nearby forest had suddenly become eerily silent. Rain suspected these could be signs of unnatural monsters infiltrating the kingdom. He immediately ordered search teams to every location and instructed them to use detection magic together. He also summoned the 6 masters from each academy, anticipating they might need additional assistance. Once his subordinates had departed, Rain angrily tossed a piece of paper into the air, wondering if the magic empire was genuinely so intent on making Noor's life difficult. Meanwhile, Noor and Lin were enjoying street food with their reward. The fat young man had given them the money for killing the goblin, even though they hadn't brought back any loot, as it was Noor's first mission. After finishing their meal, Lin said she would return home immediately. Noor felt relieved to finally get some peace. At that moment, Rain arrived looking for his sister. Upon seeing Noor, he immediately invited him to visit a mountain town the following morning. He mentioned that Lin would also join them, and that he would arrange everything, with Noor expected to pay a reasonable fee. Although Rain did not reveal the exact nature of the task in the mountain town, Noor accepted, sensing Rain's seriousness. The next morning, Noor rode in a carriage to their destination. It was his first time riding in a carriage, and this experience was the main reason he accepted Rain's request. He savored every moment of the ride. Lin, on the other hand, appeared somber. Noor asked her if she enjoyed the view outside. Noor's attention drifted back to the view outside, and he thought that once he became a true adventurer, he would leave the city to travel. Lin suddenly apologized for her brother dragging him into this, but Noor reassured her that it was fine since he was being paid. This only made Lin's mood sink further. This morning, Rain had explained that their mission was to go to the town of Tauros on the other side of the mountain. If nothing unusual happened after a while, they would proceed to the neighboring country, the Holy Kingdom of Mithra. He told Noor that as long as everything went smoothly, he could consider this trip a paid vacation. Lin hoped nothing serious would occur. Her bodyguard, Ines, assured her that she needn't worry since she was there to protect her. The truth was that Rain had assigned Ines a top-secret mission before they left. He mentioned that the kingdom was about to face a significant threat, and if it fell, Ines should take Lin to a safe haven in Mithra. Ines was surprised and asked Lin if she knew about this. Rain revealed that he hadn't told Lin because he was sure she would object. He genuinely cared about Lin's safety and said that Ines was the only person he could trust with this task. Back in the present, the group was taking a break. Ines apologized to Noor for involving him in this matter. She promised to ensure his safety, but Noor said it wasn't necessary because he was adept at running away. Ines assured him that he wouldn't need to run because she had brought a shield with her. Noor mentioned that he couldn't see anything, so Ines decided to demonstrate her abilities. She created a divine shield using her special powers and told Noor that if anything happened, he should hide behind the shield. Noor was quite impressed and then recalled that Lin had mentioned Ines was on par with Gilbert, the spear-wielding young man he had fought against. Noor had heard that Gilbert was strong enough to defeat a dragon, and if Ines was of the same caliber, Noor thought they were far too powerful compared to someone like him from the countryside. Noor was already struggling with fighting even the lowly goblin, so he was deeply impressed by Ines's abilities. He thanked her and complimented her talent, but his words reminded her of her childhood. She had grown up in an orphanage, and one day her powers had suddenly activated. When her friends, curious about her new abilities, tried to touch her, they ended up losing a finger. The headmaster was called, and soon after, a mage, a master, and a priest, along with Dandalg, arrived at the orphanage. They asked Ines to demonstrate her powers, and the mage declared that it was a gift from the heavens, given only to those of the highest virtue. He told Ines that her power could either be a sword that could cut through anything or a shield that could block any attack. It all depended on how she chose to wield it. Ines found this heavy talk distressing, but Dandalg promised to train her to use her powers correctly. He took her on as his pupil, and while he owned her abilities, she kept her distance from the other children in the orphanage, fearing that she might hurt them. This continued until she met Noor and learned his name. She had heard this name frequently from Dandog, her master, and her guardian. One day, while they were hunting monsters in the forest, another warrior mentioned that a group of giant monsters was approaching. Dandog, lost in thought, mumbled that he wished Noor were there for such moments. Ines, curious about the person her guardian admired and feeling somewhat envious, wanted to shake off her jealousy so she could fully dedicate herself to protecting Lin. Just then, Noor noticed something moving through the wheat fields, leaving behind an unusual trail. As soon as Lin heard this, she ordered the carriage to stop. She used magic to investigate what was hiding in the fields, and it turned out to be a massive bat-like frog monster. At the same time, countless monsters launched an assault on the capital. Rain ordered the warriors, swordsmen, and hunters to hunt down as many monsters as possible, while the Thieves' Guild would assist in evacuating the civilians. King Clay recalled King Delitus' warning that they would regret not accepting his conditions. He believed Delitus was behind the attack, and Rain agreed, suspecting this might just be the beginning of a more intense assault. Clay inquired about the 6 Grandmasters, and Rain informed him that they had all been assigned to confront the more formidable monsters. Meanwhile, Dandog and his troops were engaged with 3 goblin kings in the forest. Swordsmen were hunting down lizard monsters in the city, while hunters, mages, and healers were coordinating with thieves. Despite these efforts, the king worried that their forces might be too dispersed. Back in the fields, as Lin uncovered the concealment magic around a massive black dragon, she dispelled the spell. Lin and Inez recognized the beast as the Black Death Dragon, an extremely dangerous monster. Noor rushed to protect Lin without wasting a moment. He blocked the dragon's attack with his dark sword, and Inez noted that the girl had appeared just as Lin broke the concealment spell around the dragon. Lin suspected that this girl was likely a demon with the power to control monsters. Her brother had told her about demons who looked human, but had powers and natures more monstrous. He mentioned that demons were a vile race that had once destroyed an entire kingdom, leading humans to hunt them down. The descendants of demons were still alive, and Rain was certain that they harbored deep resentment towards humanity. Lin felt powerless as she watched Noor suffering from the poison released by the dragon. Even though she knew approaching the dragon was extremely dangerous, her worry for Noor prevented her from standing still. Inez, with her decisive nature, continued to protect Lin with the strong barrier, trying to block any debris or poison from reaching her. Lin began chanting a cleansing spell, knowing that while it couldn't immediately neutralize the poison, it might alleviate some of its effects. She closed her eyes, focusing on channeling her magic, while the dragon's attacks continued to surround them. Inez started to grasp the severity of the situation. She knew that if Lin wasn't protected, it wouldn't only be herself at risk, but also Noor. Inez decided to use all her strength to maintain the barrier while also trying to contact other warriors and mages in the area for assistance. Noor, even though he was nearly unconscious, could still feel the pain in Lin's effort to save him. He realized he had made a grave mistake by trying to protect the dragon without considering the consequences. Nonetheless, his dedication to Lin and everything he had done for her made him feel he had to fight on. As Lin completed the cleansing spell, she felt that the poison was gradually decreasing, but not enough to fully revive Noor immediately. Inez continued adjusting the barrier to protect them from the dragon's attacks. The kingdom's rescue forces were getting closer, and Rain had also led his troops to provide support. Rain ordered the soldiers to attack the dragon to draw its attention away from Lin and Noor. Other mages began to deploy supportive magic to alleviate the pressure from the dragon. Lin continued to pray and use her magic to lessen Noor's pain, hoping that the rescue teams would arrive in time to save them both. Her magic was not strong enough to handle the situation. As the thick black poison engulfed everything, Inez apologized to Noor for not being able to save him. Suddenly, a part of the black dragon's claw touched her barrier, and the poison cloud dissipated. Noor was forced to continue fighting the dragon despite being heavily poisoned. Seeing this, Inez realized why Dandog had wanted Noor to assist in difficult situations. She saw him as the ultimate shield, willing to protect everyone even at the cost of his own life. But she feared he might not survive this ordeal. Noor kept defending against the dragon's attacks, struggling to resist the poison. His attempts to counter the dragon's assault inadvertently created opportunities for further attacks. Despite his efforts, he eventually collapsed to the ground. He reached up to his face, and upon seeing the poisonous blood, he held on to a strong belief that he would still find a way to survive this battle. Tap 6. The past of the boy whom Noor saved was indeed very tragic. At some point, he had become an orphan with nowhere to turn. He was imprisoned by humans and lived worse than a dog. There were several other children in similar circumstances, and they were known as cursed children. All of them had the ability to manipulate demonic artifacts, which is why they were kept alive. Their half-lives used for wicked purposes. Each day, they were only given one meal. The food provided to them was leftovers from those living on the surface. This power, once used to cause animals to go mad, had gradually been repurposed to control demonic artifacts. Because their ancestors had committed so many murders, their descendants were despised. Even just looking at them would provoke the guards to beat and torment them. Rollo was the one who was beaten the most, but he also had significantly more potential than the others. Once, when he asked why he was being beaten, he was severely punished, resulting in a disfigured face. He was forced to endure hunger for 3 days to learn his lesson. After that period, Rollo began to develop his abilities on his own. He could understand the thoughts of those around him. When taken to other places, the townspeople looked at the innocent children with hatred. All the animosity was directed at them, and the increasing cruel remarks aimed at Rollo twisted his soul. No one is born with a chosen fate. Just because his ancestors were demon kin and harmed people, he now had to suffer this fate. Nevertheless, he never dared to resist. He accepted the mistreatment and never considered making others suffer the same fate. One day, Rollo was called upon to control the Black Dragon. The wretched prison guard lied to him, saying that capturing the monster would benefit some country. It was the first time Rollo had heard of demons being useful, and the sweet words from the guard made him start to trust. The guard promised that if Rollo obeyed, he would no longer be beaten and could even enjoy good food and clothing like others. The old man promised that all the children would be taken care of after he completed the task. Rollo's inherent kindness led him to agree, as otherwise everyone there would continue to be tortured. The old man, knowing that Rollo could read minds, had prepared a magical barrier to prevent his deeper thoughts from being revealed. This is why Rollo was found in the fields, heading towards the protagonist's kingdom. At that moment, the young man was suddenly attacked by a series of attacks from Lin, causing him to lose control. Then, the Black Dragon lost control and began to attack. If he were a normal person, Rollo would have died from the first attack. However, with the power of the devil, he survived the first attack. Worried that he had failed and not knowing what to do, he thought about how others would suffer because of him. The only consolation was to be freed from suffering. It was sad that he could not help or harm anyone. In the end, dying like this seemed to be a form of luck, and just as he accepted his fate, Noor suddenly appeared to protect him. This was the first time Rollo had someone stand up to protect him. He had once wished to live a normal life, eat delicious food and wear nice clothes. Although it seemed warm, it could not compare to the moment when someone stood up to protect him without looking down on him. Because he had never properly communicated with anyone, Rollo was unable to warn Noor about the poison. As a result, Noor was affected by the Black Dragon's poisonous gas without knowing it. It was only when Noor's body began to bleed black blood that he realized death was approaching. Despite this, Noor continued to use her abilities to purify the poison from the young man's body. Thanks to that, Rollo was able to survive the battle with the Black Dragon. To Rollo, Noor was like a hero who protected the weak. Even though Noor's body was losing consciousness, he continued to fight, surpassing his limits. Normally, people would die from the poison in no time, but Noor had a high level of poison resistance, so the poison was neutralized. His body also stopped bleeding, as it developed antibodies against the deadly poison. Furthermore, Noor made a bold statement saying, "There's nothing to worry about." To understand this, we need to go back to Noor's childhood. At that time, after returning from training, Noor lived alone in the mountains. Without anyone to guide him, he occasionally accidentally ate poisonous plants. The most serious case was when Noor accidentally ate a plant that contained poison equivalent to the venom of 10 black dragons combined. In just a few minutes, the poison spread throughout his body, causing him to lose all mobility instantly. Before his consciousness began to fade, he continuously used basic healing magic. It seemed that fate had not abandoned him, allowing him to survive. Part of the reason he survived was his dedication to training, which made even basic recovery magic significantly effective. The next day, the lingering effects of the poison remained. Noor tried to flush the poison out of his body by drinking lots of water, but it didn't help much. While looking for information about the plant he had eaten, he discovered that it was called Long Dai Er, a plant that his mother had warned him about, although he couldn't remember what it looked like and thus made a mistake. Although his body had not fully recovered, Noor continued to practice as usual, which was impressive. The next day, his stomach pain had subsided and he felt hungry. He went out to find food, taking extra care to stay away from Long Dai Er. Unfortunately, he was bitten by a highly venomous snake, and passed out on the spot. After a few hours, he recovered and ate a snake meal. The reason he survived was because the poison from the plant was 1,000,000 times stronger than that of the snake. Knowing that he was immune to the poison, Noor became very confident and used the snake bite as a form of practice. After several encounters, he no longer falls unconscious when poisoned. The poison injected by the snake was immediately neutralized by Noor's antibodies. Suddenly, he thought this might help him learn new skills. As a result, for an entire year, Noor caught and consumed highly poisonous creatures every day. Once, he even foolishly ate the long dai plant again, which was extremely toxic, but he still survived and only ended up sleeping for a while. Despite his efforts to expose himself to every type of toxin in existence, Noor never acquired any new skills. In reality, no one would ever learn skills this way. If anyone could, they'd likely gain the ability to transcend their body and reincarnate into another life. Returning to the present, now accustomed to the poison from the black dragon, Noor sat up and pondered. He wondered if he should catch the giant frog and make a stew out of it. The next day's battle was approaching, and Noor was excited about the prospect of eating giant frog meat. Meanwhile, Rollo, who was recovering thanks to Noor's earlier healing, watched as Noor continued to pummel the black dragon without missing a beat. Rollo was filled with admiration. To him, the black dragon seemed like a monstrous threat, but to Noor, it was just a giant frog. With several basic attacks, Noor inflicted significant damage on the black dragon, targeting its claws, teeth, and jaws. Frustrated, the black dragon decided to use its ultimate attack, inflating its mouth and preparing for a powerful offensive. Noor recognized this as a desperate, all-or-nothing move from the creature. Determined to respond to the black dragon's effort, Noor quickly shoved his sword into the frog's mouth, preventing it from unleashing its attack. The resulting pressure caused the frog's head to explode, shocking the three onlookers. Ines, who had been observing, was baffled by what was happening. She had thought Noor was defeated earlier, but now saw him fighting with newfound strength and enthusiasm. Noor looked at the remains of the giant frog he had defeated and felt a bit disappointed, as there was only a small amount of meat left. He had initially planned to take half of it with him for the journey, but given the current situation, it seemed unlikely. Noor then approached Rollo to check if he was okay. Rollo replied that he was indeed overwhelmed, having never witnessed such a high-level battle before. Noor asked if Rollo had come here alone, causing Rollo to hesitate. He feared that revealing he had brought the creature here might lead to trouble. When Noor learned that the giant frog was intended to be brought to the city, he realized that it was actually meant as food for the people there. He couldn't understand why Noor would think otherwise. It wasn't like it was a cow or a buffalo. Noor then speculated that Rollo might be in the business of herding frogs and selling them in the city. Reflecting on this, Noor felt guilty for killing what he assumed was someone's livestock. In the end, the black dragon was treated as livestock and was sent to graze in the fields like cattle. Noor apologized and promised to make amends, even though he had no money at the moment. He promised to repay Rollo in the future. Rollo, feeling relieved, insisted that Noor didn't need to compensate him. Noor was curious about how Rollo had managed to bring the giant frog here, thinking it would require a rope to drag it. Rollo honestly explained that he could control magical creatures and had used that ability to bring the frog here, which made Noor admire his skill even more. Despite being so young, Rollo could control a creature as large as the giant frog, while Noor had nearly been killed by it. Noor realized he needed to train more. The two continued to chat, although neither fully understood the other. Noor praised Rollo as a genius for having such a rare skill from birth. Noor, coming from the mountains and unfamiliar with the concept of magical creatures, wondered if they were edible. Rollo, acknowledging that he was indeed a demon, scratched his head and wished he too had the ability to control magical creatures like Noor's younger brother. Many great ideas filled Noor's mind with his ability, such as using animals for farming, or even having them guard the house. Rollo wondered why Noor didn't hate or look down on him. Despite being able to read Noor's mind, all he could sense was vague, scattered thoughts, making it unclear what Noor truly thought. Noor acknowledged that Rollo's skills and character were exceptional, which made Rollo happy. Rollo's heart was warmed by Noor's simple yet deeply affectionate words. Since they didn't know each other's circumstances, Noor could only offer encouragement. When the other two arrived to check on Noor, they were astonished to see him unharmed despite the dangerous situation. Lin had been crying, fearing the worst. Lin knew that the only thing that could counteract the black dragon's poison was a special type of energy called pure energy. Noor had learned about it from his teacher, but had only achieved the most basic level of this skill. It took the teacher 40 years to reach that level, yet Noor surpassed even that. As for Rollo, The two girls knew he was a demon. In other countries, a being like him would be treated like a monster. However, to Noor, Rollo was just a regular person whom he wanted to help, causing a shock to Inez. Noor awkwardly mentioned that he had ruined the transportation of the giant frog to the city and needed to compensate for it. Seeing Inez's fearful expression, Noor realized that Rollo was likely a slave and, according to Rollo, he only followed orders and knew nothing about his origins. Before arriving in the fields, Rollo had been blindfolded and didn't know where he came from. Lynn seemed unable to accept this at first, but Noor's attitude gradually made her rethink. Lynn began to see Rollo as a helpless child without a place to belong and requested for him to join them, but Inez refused. In the Jiao Kingdom, demons were strictly prohibited, and even the presence of Rollo would surely lead to trouble. At this moment, a new enemy suddenly appears, showing disbelief that the protagonist is still alive and licking his lips in anticipation. Noor, recognizing the man, asks if he is the one who transported Rollo, and also apologizes for damaging the cargo. The man replies that he was only hired to bring the boy back and did not care about the transportation. Noor initially thought he was a kind person until he launched a super-fast attack. Takumi reacted quickly enough to block the attack, but the enemy was disappointed to encounter a strong opponent. The man demands that Noor hand over Rollo, claiming that it will help him earn money. The man's master does not care whether Rollo is alive or dead, only that the body is handed over for a reward. Noor asks why, but the attacker does not answer and continues to attack. The enemy was indeed fast and powerful, but Noor was able to block all the attacks. Lin could not see the attacks from both warriors. Inez, understanding the danger the assassin posed, instructed the princess to stay behind to protect. The blindfolded attacker, who had broken his sword after a counterattack, quickly drew two knives and continued to slash at the impregnable sword, making no progress. It seemed that the previous attacks were just a warm-up. In the next attack, Noor was startled by the assassin's terrifying speed. Although he blocked the stab, the force of the stab was so great that it pushed him and his brother back. He could not believe that a single slash could produce such a powerful force, feeling that it was even stronger than the bull he had fought in the dungeon. However, after that exchange, the enemy's weapon shattered. Sensing that something was wrong, the assassin continued to attack. Due to the extremely fast speed of the attacks, Noor had to rely on her instincts to defend, and with Rollo behind her, Noor feared that she would soon be exhausted. The enemy continued to question why Noor was not dead yet, despite using many assassin skills. Looking from afar, Lin could not believe that the impact of those attacks could create such a strong shockwave. Even approaching was difficult, and Inez, understanding the princess's concerns, set up a barrier in front of her to ensure her safety in case Noor got into trouble. Inez revealed that the enemy was Zaidu, a former S-class adventurer known for his great strength and danger. In a recent meeting with the kingdom's leaders, the princess mentioned the case involving Zaidu. Everyone present knew him well and considered him a target to be eliminated. The 6 strongest individuals advised against engaging him, abandoning the hunt for fear of further bloodshed. From a young age, Zaidu was a prodigy, earning the title of Dragon Slayer at the age of 13, his name becoming famous throughout the nations. Unfortunately, he chose not to use his talents and powers for noble purposes, instead committing the brutal act of slaughtering 36 innocent people. Despite all the efforts of the guild, they still could not subdue this monstrous humanoid creature. In Zaidu's mind, money was the most important thing, so as long as someone was willing to pay, he could be hired for any task. After being wanted, Zaidu caused such havoc that he destroyed an entire country. Despite this, Noor was still able to fight off bad guys, proving that he was as strong as an S-class adventurer. Those who had previously wanted to hunt Zaidu were mostly defeated by him. Therefore, despite the large bounty on Zaidu's head, no one dared to risk their lives to confront this evil creature. The guild even falsely claimed that Zaidu had made a deal to make people forget about him. After a while of fighting, all of Zaidu's weapons were destroyed, and Noor apologized for not being able to compensate for the damage when Zaidu continuously attacked him. Zaidu finds Noor amused and surprised that his most durable weapon is shattered. To counter this, Zaidu uses his ultimate technique. His assassination skills allow him to create hundreds of steel blades from broken weapons. With this move, he is capable of destroying hundreds of people at once, explaining how he can destroy an entire country. Since Noor has destroyed many of his weapons, Zaidu decides to create even more blades to test Noor's abilities. As expected, Noor is unable to block all of the blades due to protecting Rollo, so he uses his own body as a shield. Lin and Inez watch this with sadness, as it seems that Noor is on the verge of defeat. Although Ines wants to help, she is constrained by her duty to protect the princess. However, remembering Noor's efforts, she asks the princess for permission to fight alongside him. The princess agreed, and Lin immediately created a shield to protect Noor while simultaneously attacking Zadu. Ines's shield completely blocked Zadu's damage, and it also served as a counter-attack weapon. But Zadu's speed was too great and the situation remained unchanged. Both Noor and Ines understood this, and Ines asked Noor to do something while she focused on defense. Remembering the times he chased birds that flew faster than Zadu's blades, Noor came up with a strategy. He asked Ines to break the barrier when he signaled, and aimed at the flying blades by increasing his physical strength. Noor focused all his strength on throwing rocks directly at the blades, destroying many of them. This method eliminated the worry of running out of ammo because there were a lot of rocks around. After a few throws, the number of blades decreased significantly, allowing Noor and his Ines to gradually gain the upper hand in the battle. Seeing this, Zadu resorted to his assassin instincts to approach Ines and strike, but Noor was still able to react in time. Zadu was taken aback, but that was something he was supposed to say himself. Zadu was stunned when Noor managed to block his attack, even shattering some of the toughest materials in the world. Since the attack failed to hit Noor, Zadu didn't have to compensate for the damages, however. Due to the excessive loss of weapons, he needed to earn money by capturing Rollo. Noor asked Zadu to stop the sneak attacks, and Zadu questioned how Noor could perceive his blade paths and block them. Noor replied that he could sense them. This left Zadu dumbfounded, so he decided to cease the attack, fearing further losses. He decided to call it a day for now. Noor asked if Zadu would come again in the future, and Zadu affirmed that he might, as he was planning to go to the capital city for some exciting event. However, with his weapons destroyed, he might not be able to participate. Ines inquired about this, and Zadu mentioned that there was currently a grand battle taking place in the capital. As Zadu prepared to leave, Noor invited him to meet again, which Zadu found strange, noting that he had never met anyone like Noor before. He congratulated Rollo for surviving, as being captured would have meant certain death, and he would have made a lot of money. Zadu considered trying again, but ultimately decided to leave after Noor successfully countered his attack. He vanished in a puff of black smoke using his skills. The immediate threat was over, but a more pressing issue arose. Zadu mentioned that something was happening in the capital city. Although it was hard to trust a dangerous person like Zadu, Lin was very worried. They hadn't traveled far yet, so Noor suggested returning. Rollo suddenly felt fearful upon realizing that everyone came from the capital. Rollo warned them not to return, recalling that those who forced him to bring the frog mentioned something even larger and more terrifying than the Black Death Dragon. It was supposed to be the end of the city, which frightened Rollo. Lin understood the seriousness of the situation and suggested returning to the city before it was too late. Ines, who knew about the ongoing war, tried to stop everyone. This was an order from Prince Rain, which Ines was aware of as she was the closest to him. She had guessed that the prince wanted her to take Rollo away from their homeland. Lin thought that while she might escape, there was nothing she could do afterward, while everyone else had to fight to protect the kingdom. She compared Rollo's situation to her own, saying that although she might be better off, losing one's roots rendered survival meaningless. Ines sympathized and agreed, but asked the princess not to leave her side. Noor asked if Rollo would accompany him since Zadu would likely return. Rollo agreed, appreciating Noor's protection and apologizing for causing them trouble. The actions Rollo took were meant to save others in his clan, and Noor understood, making Lin feel quite embarrassed. She wondered why he was so forgiving. At this moment, the protagonist thought of the frog-like creature he wanted to eat, but decided to save it for another time. On the way back, the students felt more at ease with her by their side. Since he had defeated the Black Dragon and fought the legendary Zadu to the end, perhaps he could change the outcome. With his current carefree and relaxed mood, their side now had a 50% chance of success. She urged Ines to go faster so they could return in time. Meanwhile, in the capital, everything was in ruins. Rain, who was inspecting the damage, felt heartbroken seeing the state of the country. Fortunately, the people had been evacuated, and they were protected by the 6 holy knights. These knights were doing their best to repel the enemy's attack, but their hidden forces could not find any clues. Rain was certain that the battle would continue. They were currently at their weakest, so the enemy would likely intensify their attacks soon. As he tried to predict where the next attack might come from, he glanced at the sky and saw only a shadow, as the creature was flying higher than the clouds. Rain immediately used a spell to break the invisibility barrier, revealing the monster's true form. It was not just a black dragon, but a demon dragon. As Rollo had predicted, if things continued like this, the capital would be destroyed. Noor's childhood was filled with tales of dragon-slaying heroes, told by his father. The dragon, a formidable beast at the top of the food chain, was vanquished by a brave adventurer who used its remains to craft powerful weapons and potions. The region flourished thanks to the hero's deeds, earning him a legendary reputation. Noor yearned to be a hero just like him. His father, however, explained that the path was far from easy. Some dragons had lived for millennia, their scales harder than any metal humans could mine. Even the slightest tremor from their movements could shake the earth, and a flick of their tail would send Noor flying. The continent itself bore scars from the dragon's wrath in ages past. If Noor were to face such a creature, he would be little more than a morsel, devoured in a single bite. Returning to reality, Mayne suddenly felt something very strange. Lin hadn't seen anything yet, but a few seconds later, the horrifying silhouette of the Calamity Dragon appeared. It was heading straight for their kingdom. The people evacuating froze in their tracks upon seeing this sight. They knew, simply put, that even if they ran, they couldn't escape. The dragon's body, a breathtaking pitch black, was synonymous with unstoppable destruction. Rain didn't know if the Imperial people understood what kind of creature this was, to bring it over here. But to be able to control a Calamity Dragon, they must have some secret that other nations were unaware of. According to records, it had only been 150 years since this creature last went into hibernation, and now it was right above them. With a single beat of its wings, the area below was blown away. The prince ordered the evacuation of the people, knowing that fighting the dragon was futile. He wanted everyone to leave the capital city. No one was to be left behind. The six saints saw the situation was dire. The current situation was no different from the Dark Ages when the continent was ravaged by dragons. Each member of the six saints was busy dealing with hordes of monsters. The king, from his palace, saw that the dragon had no intention of leaving and ordered Gilbert to lead the refugees out of the city. He himself still had things to do here. Outside, Inez watched her homeland face a disaster of apocalyptic proportions, filled with rage. Lin was even worse off, unable to do anything. According to her guard, wherever the dragon went, destruction followed. The city was evacuating, and even if they returned, they could do nothing. She knew that if this were the case, her older brother and father would use themselves as shields. If it were her father from 30 years ago, there might have been a chance to confront that evil dragon. She could only pray that her two loved ones would leave quickly. Mayne, standing beside her, found the situation fascinating. This was his first time encountering a dragon. He spoke casually, leaving the other three speechless. He had just fought a black death dragon, yet he claimed to have never seen a dragon before. Knowing her brother and father were still in the city, she wanted to rush there to save them. She asked how, and Noor reminded her of the time they fought the giant centipede, when she had pushed him away with incredible speed. He suggested doing the same thing again, launching himself straight towards the dragon to behead it. Lin's eyes widened in disbelief at her master's request. Noor's reason for saving the city was simple. He had been cared for by her father and brother, who had even gifted him this sword. Now was the time to repay them. If it were just about getting them out of the city, he was more than capable of doing so. These words made Lin realize her mistake. She had foolishly thought it was too late. Normally, that technique couldn't be used on humans, but since he had tried it once before, he was less worried. The king was slowly walking towards the dragon. He remembered the threats from the Imperial forces, who had arrogantly claimed they could easily crush this small kingdom. Despite this, he had refused to hand over the labyrinth with no exit, a place that held many secrets humanity couldn't decipher, much like the legendary indestructible sword. If these villains had such powerful resources, the entire continent would be under the Empire's brutal rule. The Calamity Dragon's landing in the capital made their intentions clear. They only wanted the labyrinth. Everything else was irrelevant. He blamed himself for falling into the negotiation trap set by the Imperial forces. Looking down from above, the old king remembered Lin when she was young. He was relieved that his daughter was safe. He was willing to die fighting the Calamity Dragon. Perhaps he was more suited to a life of adventure after all, rather than letting his people suffer. Although he couldn't fix his mistakes, he wanted to at least use his life to hold back the monster, giving everyone time to escape. Meanwhile, Inez had come up with a way to use her magic more precisely and powerfully. She created a long tunnel with her shield for Mayne to stand in. She would control the direction, and Lin would use all her strength to push him forward. Seeing the girl meticulously layering the enhancement spells, Noor innocently asked why this time was different. Inez explained that the thrust and pressure would be significantly stronger than that day, urging her master to endure. Before he could agree, he was shot towards the capital with all the magical power Inez could muster. In the blink of an eye, Maine seemed to disappear into thin air, causing Rollo to feel fear. Meanwhile, the dragon had already approached the king and was preparing to breathe fire. The pressure from its mouth was immense. Just standing upright was a struggle. Rain and the soldiers below were horrified by the sight. This was the technique that had burned the continent for centuries. It was called the breath of the Calamity Dragon. Once released, it would surely kill anyone in its path. There was no room for argument. Seeing that the dragon did not give him a chance to counterattack, the king smiled. He wanted to stand firm and complete his mission to the end. Besides the great sword he had given to Noor, he still possessed a self-destructing magic sword. At the very least, he wanted the dragon to taste the determination of humanity. This was a fatal technique, using everything he had in a single, devastating blow. The six saints witnessed this, not knowing how to help. Just as both sides were about to launch an attack, Noor suddenly appeared from nowhere, smashing into the dragon's jaw. The destructive fire breath was deflected, diverted in another direction. The king stood still, confused by this sudden turn of events. The onlookers were equally stunned as Noor appeared out of nowhere. The blow sent the dragon crashing to the ground. Surprisingly, this creature was sentient. It was covered in mud, glaring angrily at Maine. For dragons, the strong dominate the weak, and this small creature dared to challenge it. The pressure from the dragon made Maine lose interest. It roared and growled at him. The dragon roared like a beast and whipped its tail. Each blow was parried by Maine, pushing the force back towards the dragon. After those two attacks, he thought he was dead. Fortunately, the girls aimed accurately, hitting the dragon's head with their attacks. He remembered that because his speed exceeded the sound barrier, he was momentarily unconscious. As he became huge, he spun like a top. In order to avoid losing his balance, he increased his leg speed to run at the speed of sound, keeping himself balanced. Using the momentum from the explosion, he easily jumped over the walls. He intended to land underneath, but the remaining force pushed him straight towards the dragon. Well, since he was there, Maine decided to slash it with his impregnable sword. As a result, the Calamity Dragon was knocked to the ground twice. Taking advantage of the moment, Maine also used the opportunity to heal the back of his neck, which was aching terribly. He decided to tell Lynn to tone down the force next time. Looking up at the sky, he saw the area where the dragon had breathed fire, and it was quite a sight. He felt that this dragon wasn't as terrifying as his father had described. It seemed easy to handle, considering it was just big. At that moment, Maine wanted to fight to protect what was worth protecting. He felt a surge of confidence after knocking the dragon down twice. The other three finally made it into the capital, witnessing the devastation caused by the dragon. It was truly heartbreaking. Rollo warned the two sisters to be careful, as there were not only dragons but also other dangerous monsters lurking within the city. They were almost hit, but luckily managed to raise their shields in time. Inez warned the two not to leave their spot, as the enemies ahead were too dangerous. They were goblins, similar to the one Maine had defeated before. These were slightly smaller, but each had a gem on their heads. Lynn was worried, unsure what to do. If it were her master, he would definitely draw his sword and fight. So, following Inez's lead, she tried to encourage Lynn, saying that they were just goblins, and there was nothing to fear. Lynn agreed. Compared to the flying black lizard, these goblins were nothing. The battle began, but magic was ineffective. Inez's shield could still block attacks, but this wouldn't last. Desperate, Rollo used his demon race ability to freeze the goblins in place. Immediately, Lynn created freezing air, encasing them all in ice. She transformed her shield into a sword and delivered a fatal blow. As expected of someone with two titles, this was a masterful display. Credit had to be given to Rollo for creating the opportunity. Despite being terrified, he had mustered all his courage to help. Lynn sensed this and silently thanked him. Meanwhile, the black dragon was seething with rage, having been repeatedly knocked back by Maine. Its claws, which were supposed to be indestructible, were starting to chip away after numerous strikes from the indestructible sword. The dragon couldn't understand why its body was being injured, even though its opponent was just a human. The king, watching from below, saw that his legendary sword was indeed as good as advertised. Despite being struck repeatedly, the sword remained unscathed. The dragon's confidence soared, but it also realized a problem. Knowing that normal attacks wouldn't work, it flew high into the air, preparing to unleash a world-destroying blast of its sacred dragon breath. Everyone below could only pray. Just as it descended, Maine parried the attack completely. The force was redirected upwards, exploding in the sky, leaving the black dragon dumbfounded. So the dragon breath that had once devastated the continent could be deflected. Thankfully, it hadn't hit the dragon itself, or it might have been obliterated. Rollo translated the dragon's feelings. It was furious, even though it acknowledged Main's strength. The fact that the human below didn't seem to fear it at all. This was understandable. Dragons were at the top of the food chain, their pride reaching unimaginable heights. To be humiliated by a creature as small as an ant was unbearable. Moreover, it was a calamity dragon, so the pain was amplified. The physical damage was minimal compared to the psychological trauma it had suffered. The dragon, regaining its composure, charged at Maine again. This time, it was met with another parry, resulting in a broken tooth. After that blow, its mind cleared, and it finally looked at Maine with a newfound respect. Rollo sensed that the dragon had calmed down, or rather, had been subdued by the man. Even seemed to be bowing its head in submission, though Maine was oblivious. Suddenly, the atmosphere became eerily silent. Maine didn't understand why, but more importantly, he remembered his father's words when he saw the gleaming tooth. Materials from dragons were incredibly rare and could enrich an entire nation. The man who killed a dragon would be hailed as a hero. Maine considered striking a few more blows, but seeing the dragon's defeated state, he relented. He realized he wouldn't become a hero after all. After this, the dragon had no further desire to fight. Everyone rushed forward to celebrate this unexpected victory.